on in, everyone. Come on in because we are back, y'all, to talk about this P. Diddy trial. We are catching up. So I am now catching us up, or my commentary is catching us up on, I want to say Thursday and Friday, which would have been the 28th and 29th. So my question is, do y'all think the prosecution is in trouble? I do. I think they're in trouble, y'all, and hear me out. I know a lot of y'all are going to be mad at me, but I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm going to say I think they're in trouble. Let me tell you why I think they're in trouble. I hear all of you guys' comments in my videos, and a lot of you are calling me, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know the law. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know any sexual SA victims. I've never been SA'd. And actually, all of you guys are right. You guys are all 100% correct. But here's the problem. That's who's on the jury. That's who's on the jury. I guarantee you there are no lawyers on the jury. There are no attorneys. There's no one in the legal field on the jury. There's no experts in the SA world. There are no victims of SA on the jury. I guarantee you that none of those people are on the jury. They got rid of them. They're not on the jury. So really what you have to do is you've got to convince people like me. You've got to convince people like me. And I'm going to tell you, we are hearing from this lady, Mia, and it didn't do it for me again, y'all. I don't get it. I just really don't get it. I think where they are in a problem with is not that we can't see what Sean Diddy Combs has done. I think where the problem is going to come in is the unanimous decision on all the counts. I just don't see them getting there. I can see them maybe convicting of something because people may not want him to walk free, right? And so they will convict him on something. But do I see a unanimous decision across all counts? I don't. And I understand what all the lawyers are saying out there in my comments, that they've already proven RICO cases and all this other kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to have another problem. We're going to have another problem. I know lawyers like to deal with facts. I'm an engineer. I know all about facts and figures and real things and not emotion. I know all about it. And I think lawyers also they want to deal with the facts. But the problem is that the decision on whether or not to convict a person, there's going to be emotion that gets involved in it. And the jurors are going to bring some emotion to the table. And from what I hear, the jury is made up of 8 men and 4 women. And none of those women I know are going to be victims of SA. None of those jurors are going to have anyone that they may even know or are close to ever having been a victim of SA. So they're not going to come with any of that emotional bias. And then I think they're going to have a problem with the men, especially when it involves around the trafficking and the prostitution. I think they're going to have problems with it because of the culture that we have now surrounding these types of activities. Unfortunately, you have a lot of men who have gone to, been involved in strip clubs or, bringing in women to work parties for bachelor parties. And I think a lot of men are going to have a problem with being seen as a participant in trafficking. Because as we know, a lot of women in that field are technically trafficked. And I think they're going to have a hard time saying, well, if I put Diddy in jail for this, what does that say about me when I participated in it? They themselves may not have been the trafficker, but I don't know. They've known people who've planned parties for bachelor parties. They've known about it. They're not that many degrees separated from it. And what they'd have to reconcile is that somewhere in their own past, in their own history, they themselves have been involved in this sort of human trafficking thing. And I think that's going to be hard. Now, did they weed those men out? Maybe. Maybe they weeded them out. I don't know. But I tell you this, as much as I want Diddy to go to jail, as much as this testimony is horrific, I even have doubt in some of these charges, which means I don't see a unanimous decision. I just don't. I don't see a unanimous decision across all these charges. And as we know, they are getting close to wrapping up the actual case of the prosecutor, which means now we get to have the defense go and they're going to have the opportunity to almost debunk a lot of this stuff. And to be honest with you, a lot of these witnesses, their testimony and their account of things had me just scratching my head, just really had me scratching my head. So we're going to go through it. We're going to go through the testimony because really what happened on these last couple of days is we had the testimony of, it was the pseudonym of the young lady named Mia. She was the one that's on this recap that I'm doing. And she was forced to come here to testify, just like Cassie, where all these ladies were, just as they were forced to participate in this life of Diddy, as they tell it, they were also forced to come here and testify. They didn't want to come. No one wants to be here. No one wants to be here. So like I said, they were forced to participate in the activity with Diddy, and they were forced to come here and testify because the Mia lady, she doesn't even want to be known. And she goes on to testify that she herself was essayed by Diddy. And what we want to talk about is some of her testimony and how even in her testimony, as hard as it was for me to read and listen to, I still have doubt. I still have doubt on the part of the coercion. I do. Because once again, her testimony sounds so eerily familiar from a lot of these people. And that is, they were still there to get something from Diddy. That's the part that I have a problem with. But her testimony is around the fact that he was forced her to perform different type of acts on him, and that he also snuck in the bed to have sex with her against her will. And when we're talking about this sneaking into the bedroom, we find out that she was doing this and it was happening all behind the back of Cassie, but yet she says she's such good friends with Cassie. So here you are, really good friends with Cassie. P. Diddy is secretly behind Cassie's back, S-A-N you, but you're good friends with Cassie. And so what I'm supposed to then take on is that you don't even tell Cassie what's going on. Why don't you even tell Cassie? Because I think if you tell Cassie what was going on, that also might jeopardize her job. So in a lot of ways, I think, yeah, is she scared? She's scared to tell Cassie because in a lot of ways, she's kind of with Cassie's man, technically, even though that man, which is Diddy, is S.A.ing her. That's what we've got here. That's exactly what we have here. It's not like she and Cassie commiserated as victims together that this man was doing it. She actually kept it a secret from Cassie. In fact, I wonder if the first time Cassie has found out about this is now here during the trial, because according to Mia, she has kept this a secret her entire life. Like I said, I'm still having a problem with anything beyond Diddy. Anything with Diddy, I completely agree with it. There's no question in my mind about it. Where I'm stuck is the criminal enterprise, the coercion, the forceness. Are there times when I can see that there was coercion or there was force? Yeah, but I can see a lot of times when it wasn't. That's what gives me the reasonable doubt. That's the problem. I have maybe as much part of me that feels that it wasn't coercion versus the part of me that feels it was coercion. And that for me then gives me the reasonable doubt. I can't feel definitively that it was always coercion, right? And I guess someone will come along and say, well, it doesn't always have to be coercion. Sometimes it could have been consensual and sometimes it could have been coercion. And so therefore you could still vote for coercion, even if it wasn't always coercion. I'm saying you're right. But the problem now is now I don't trust myself because I could be thinking even the times where I thought it wasn't coercion, where I thought it was coercion, maybe it wasn't that either because of this other time I know when it wasn't. You see, that's the problem. That's the problem. Even in my mind, if I think it's 50-50, what I'll guess sometimes is, I wonder if that was really coercion, because then some other evidence will come in and say, well, I don't understand, if you were coerced, why would you do that? Why would you go back? You see, I understand that when you get in too deep and you can't get out and now you feel stuck, that I kind of understand, y'all. But what I don't understand is, and this is what I'm saying, is when on day one, when you meet Diddy and he does what he does, before you are in too deep, before he's had a chance to put his hooks into you, before he's had a chance to blackmail you or bribe you or use anything against you, he doesn't have anything on you at the time. Nothing. You are on day one. What I don't understand is when he shows himself on day one, you don't leave. You have testimony not only from Capricorn Clark, you have testimony from Mia, all of them talking about the absurd things Diddy did on their day one of their employment, coming to the door half naked. Now, this isn't even to mention the things that they knew about Diddy. The rumors of Diddy have been floating around for a long time. First of all, I don't even know why you would want to work for Diddy, because the rumors are prevalent. But let's say you never heard of the rumors, but then you go and on day one, they're talking about Diddy kidnapping them, taking them to the woods, showing up with no clothes on. These are markers of a crazy man. These are all markers of a crazy man. So I'm thinking is, you're not coerced yet. There's no undue influence on you yet. This is day one. This stuff is even happening at interviews with Diddy. This is how crazy Diddy is. He isn't even waiting until you work from him and then you start trusting him and then all of a sudden he turns on you. No, Diddy is showing up like this from day one. He doesn't even try to hide it, but yet you're faced with it. So then I say, I can't believe it's coercion. No one coerced you to work for Diddy, right? You may say, oh, I was coerced to stay, but no, I don't believe you were coerced to stay, because I don't even believe how you were coerced to work from him. Why would you work for a person that shows up in an interview with no clothes on? Why would you work with a person who on the interview day, they took you to the woods and threatened to kill you? It doesn't feel like coercion. It feels like you wanted to be there because you wanted those things that would come along with being able to say that you were Diddy's assistant. There was one time when the witness, Mia, testifies that she was in a car. She got pulled over by the police. This is even after she's been working for Diddy for a long time. All these things that Diddy has done to her. And when she was going to get just a simple speeding ticket, she could have easily just taken the speeding ticket. But you know what she decided to do was name drop. She decided to name drop Diddy's name. And she said once the police officer didn't believe her at first, and she showed the police officer her phone to prove she worked for Diddy, the police officer let her go because the police officer was a fan of P. Diddy. And she said that's what she used as why she was afraid to talk to police, because she knew how much power Diddy had. Wait a minute. So on one hand, you were afraid of Diddy's power, but on the second hand, when you were in trouble, you used Diddy's power to get out of something for your benefit. This is what I'm talking about. So when it was to your benefit to affiliate yourself with Diddy, you did it. But when it's not in your benefit, then you want to talk about who Diddy is. This is why I got a problem, y'all. I got a big problem with all these witnesses. There's not a witness yet that I didn't have a problem with. I mean, the guy that came on that was a stylist, Deontay or whatever else, you know, he really looked like he was looking out for Cassie. He says he's still good friends with Cassie. He talks to Cassie every single day. That alone would say that I'm not even sure I don't even know if I could accept his testimony. If you tell me you're the best friend of Cassie, I'm going to look at you where you're the best friend of Cassie. You're trying to look out for Cassie. You're going to look out for her. So honestly, y'all, I hate to keep saying it. I hate to be this person down here because I'm really not trying to get Diddy off. I'm really not. I think he should serve time. But I have a problem with the bar that's going to be set, which is you're going to have to get all 12 jurors to say yes. And inevitably, there are going to be some people like me in the juror. I know people are saying they're happy. I ain't no lawyer because I don't know the law. Well, neither do those jurors. And even if you get instruction from the judge interprets the law, but you still have to prove to the jury that the facts line up with the law the way that it has been interpreted. And I think they're going to have a problem with that because these are ordinary people. These are not lawyers. These are not professionals in this industry. These are not therapists. They're none of these. They're ordinary people. And when you hear the story of a lot of these victims, it gives you pause. It gives you absolute pause. Are the stories horrible? They're very, very horrible, but it gives you pause. I mean, Nash tells us the story, which was Cassie's stylist, that he was the one that actually hooked Cassie up with Michael B. Jordan. I guess this was one of those times when Cassie and Diddy were off and on again. But what's interesting about this is even in him saying how he was such good friends with Cassie, Cassie even kept from him what she was doing with Diddy behind closed doors in the freak-offs. Even he didn't know. For years, he thought that the sex videos were maybe just of her having sex with Diddy. And it wasn't until years later, that she told him, no, the videos are also of me in the video, right? Of me in the video doing these things. So now I say, you're best friends with Cassie. You've been best friends with Cassie for all these years. Supposedly y'all tell everything. And even she has kept away her involvement from you in these acts. So what do I think as a juror? Do I believe that Cassie also isn't keeping things away from me and I'm just a juror? Of course she is. This is what I'm telling you, which creates the doubt. When you see so many witnesses and you see how they moved and shaped, and you could see how many of occasions, they're pointing out that Cassie was sometimes involved in doing some things too. And this Mia was also involved in somehow being involved with Diddy behind Cassie's back, even though she was SA'd, but yet she never even spoke up to Cassie. And later on, we find out that Diddy goes off on Mia and says when he was trying to get her another situation where there was a story about Mia having written some type of movie. Now, remember, Mia's testimony is that she worked day and night for Diddy. She never got to sleep. But yet somewhere along this way, she wrote a whole movie. Somewhere along the way, from working for Diddy day and night, never sleeping for 5 days straight, this is what she tells us, she wrote a script to a whole movie. Lo and behold, she sold that movie possibly to some movie company, and they were going to buy the rights to this movie that she somehow found time to write, even though she was working day and night for Diddy and never could sleep. Okay, Mia. So once Diddy finds out, he's furious. He's upset. He feels betrayed by her. And so what he threatens to do is, I'm going to tell Cassie all about us. This is what he says. And then I say, well, wait a minute. I thought that Cassie wasn't being informed because, of course, Diddy was going behind Cassie's back and sleeping with this other woman, Mia. And Mia describes it as not consensual sex, but every time they were together, it was SA. She never mentions consensual sex. And it sounds like it happened a lot of times. So every time it was not consensual sex. So I'm wondering, how would Diddy have the gumption to believe that telling Cassie about them would harm her? Why would it harm Mia? If Mia would love for it to be known because she's really a victim, then why would that be a threat to her? Why would Diddy believe it's a threat to say, I'm going to tell Cassie? I'm going to tell Cassie. Because somewhere along the way, more than likely, Mia didn't want to tell Cassie yet. Because remember, Mia was not only friends with Cassie all during this time, she was helping her with her career. She was doing a lot of things. And behind the back, as she says, she was being essayed by Diddy in the house, different places, in the bathroom, in the plane. And it was interesting because part of her testimony said there was never any reason or rhyme or pattern or prediction of when Diddy would want to essay her, that it was all random. She says the only common theme that there was it only happened when Cassie wasn't around. That is a theme. That is a theme. What man cheats on his girlfriend with the other woman there? I mean, even in all these videos that we say that they taped and they recorded, we still haven't heard Diddy with anyone else but Cassie in those types of videos. Like I said, I have reasonable doubt, y'all. I'm sorry if I'm not fully sold like a lot of people are out here in the comments, where a lot of you are listening to the experts. You're listening to, I guess, the legal experts, the lawyers, and that is helping you form your opinion. But remember, there are no lawyers on the jury. There are no professional psychologists, psychiatrists on the jury. And this is why a lot of lawyers employ jury consultants, because what jury consultants help lawyers do is, I know lawyers, you know facts and figures, and you know how to present a case, and you know the law inside and out. But these jury consultants says, I know people. And these jury consultants typically are not lawyers themselves. You know what they are? They're psychologists. They're psychologists. They're social workers. They're people who study human behavior, because what they recognize is outside of the law, outside of the interpretation of law, people are going to bring their biases and their experiences, which could then alter the way that they see the same situation that you see. And I think what a lot of people are missing, they are stuck with the fact that, oh, they've already proven RICO, they've already proved racketeering, they've already proved prostitution and human trafficking. But listen, the average person probably doesn't even understand fully, to the extent even the difference between prostitution and human trafficking. And if they really explained it to a lot of people will realize that they actually have been involved with it. They actually have been involved with it. When you ordered strippers to come to your house or to a party and you paid them, when you were someplace and you got involved in it, and any of those people were across state lines, you were somehow involved in it. I'm not saying that you were indeed the pimp or the whatever, but you were involved with it. And a lot of people aren't going to feel comfortable with that. They aren't going to feel comfortable saying, some of this stuff I've done. Some of this stuff you want me to convict Diddy of, I've done. Forget about all the abuse and all that. I don't think there's a person around who doesn't believe Diddy's done this domestic violence, but he's not on trial for that. He's not on trial for that. So that other part, I think, is going to be difficult. And this Mia defendant, I'm telling you, she was no better of a witness for me than Cassie was. I'm sorry to tell you, she was no better of a witness for me than Cassie was. Even once Cassie told her stylist Nash that she was actually in these videos, these freak offs, there came a point in time where he actually got exhausted from the fact that Cassie was still being involved with it. Because remember, they're still friends today, which means there was a long period of time after he found out that he still remained friends with Cassie, even though Cassie was still involved in this mess, coerced. There came a point in time where even Nash accepted it. He accepted it because I'm sure, as her friend, if he loved her and cared about her, he more than likely tried to pull her away from it and said, you shouldn't be doing this. But after a while, he even said he would go out with Cassie. And then when they got back to a hotel, Cassie would tell him, you got to leave now because we're about to begin one of these freak offs. And there's a man coming, and he would just leave, as if Cassie told him somebody was coming over to give her a mani-pedi. It's wild. It is absolutely wild. And do I believe that Diddy's been doing this a lot of years? I do. I even believe that he was doing some form of it with Kim Porter prior to Cassie. Cassie was 2.0. Kim Porter was 1.0. And actually, I should say that Diddy growing up with his mama was 1.0, because I read a little bit about that Diddy's mother used to throw the same type of parties. get me what I hear. I hear that Diddy's mother, Janice Combs, when he was a young boy, threw the same type of parties. Now, were they on the level of Diddy's parties? No, because she didn't have the money, she didn't have the fame, she did not have everything that Diddy had. So Diddy actually took a page out of his mother's book, and he ramped it up. I think Diddy's been doing this a long time. There is a good chance that Diddy was doing this in college. Who knows? But Diddy did it. He took it to a whole nother level. And what I believe is that Kim Porter was probably doing some of these freak offs with Diddy during their years together. And once she no longer wanted to do it anymore, but she also had children with him, that is when she eventually got replaced by Cassie. That is when eventually she got replaced by Cassie. And she probably wanted to get replaced. She didn't want to do it anymore. Mia says that when she worked for Diddy, that there were these great highs and there were these great lows. All of these witnesses tell the same story. They talk about these really, really low periods of working for Diddy, but they also talk a lot about the highs. And so that's the part where I say, well, what really kept you there? Did the highs keep you there, or did the coercion keep you there? And that's why I say I have reasonable doubt. Where do you parse it? Where do you say you stayed because of those highs, those wonderful parts you loved, going to San Tropez, going on private yachts, being able to get out of speeding tickets just by saying you work for Diddy? How do you parse that and say, nope, those highs I did because I was also coerced? That is the part I'm having a real problem with. And I also have a problem when Mia says she was such good friends with Cassie and she was so loyal to Cassie and she wanted to help Cassie, but she was also willing to still continue to be in sort of this SA relationship, as she calls it. Those are her words, with Diddy behind Cassie's back, and never say anything to Cassie at all. Never say anything, Cassie. We later find out that this Mia witness also settled for $400,000 with Diddy. There came a time when the division that she worked for with Diddy, which was Revolt, they closed it. I guess it wasn't making any money. Diddy didn't want to do it anymore. They laid everybody off. Mia was devastated. She was devastated to be let go by a company and a man that she said was SAing her. Like I said, she was let go. She was let go, and then she got upset. And you know what she did? She did the very thing I told everyone else they should have done, which is go file a lawsuit against your employer. And that's what she did. Everybody else told me I was crazy last time I mentioned that in the video, but that's what Mia did. She was let go. She went and got her lawyer. She sued, and she won $400,000. She says she only got $200,000 because the lawyers took half of it. But the fact of the matter is, she had a very good case. All of these people had a very good case against Diddy as an employer, period. It's not that difficult. The case to win against Diddy for all the employee and what he did to his employees, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that. I really don't know. But let me tell you, they all had a very good case. I also heard by, I think it was the guy, Gene Deal, he said that Diddy was paying Cassie over $250,000 a year, in addition to paying all her bills. So in this case where people say she was under a record contract, but yet Diddy never released any of her music, no, that's different. Because a lot of people who were taken advantage of by music companies, if they didn't release their music, they still weren't even receiving any money. So they were really choked out. They were starved to death. They were making music. They were going to the studio. None of their music was being publishing. And so they didn't even have an ability to make money because the studios own the rights to all their music. But you have Cassie, on the other hand, who was going to the studio, making movies, making music. And although her music was never published, she was also being paid $250,000 a year. So was she being paid to publish, to make music and not get it published? Was she being paid to plan these freak offs? Was she being paid as a worker herself? You see, all of this is just a lot of mush. It really, really is. And because it's so convoluted, that's where I believe there's reasonable doubt. It really is. You know, Mia talks a lot about how she was never able to sleep while working with Diddy, but then we hear of the time she was in her bedroom and she was asleep and he jumped on her. I was like, girl, first of all, when someone tells me they were never able to sleep, I feel like when people exaggerate stories, it makes you then don't believe, well, which part is true. Because what you would be telling me is if you didn't sleep for 5 days, I guess Diddy didn't sleep. Because supposedly what you're telling me is Diddy was up all night for 5 days straight torturing you. And then she would talk around and say, oh, I was asleep in the bedroom. You know, one time I was asleep in the hammock in the Caribbean. You know, sometimes he would want us by his side for 24 hours, even though he never had any work for us. Which is it, girl? Were you a slave and working all the time, or were you asleep? And I'm telling you, I know y'all gonna be mad at me, but it's hard to parse the parts where you are a slave and you were coerced versus the part where you were there willingly to be able to reap some of the rewards of this life. It really is, like I said, very, very muddy. And like I said, the biggest problem I have with a lot Capricorn Clark's testimony and Mia's is that this abuse that Diddy did with these women, because he was abusive to them, is that it happened on the first day of their work. And that's when I say, if there's any part in time where you would have been the least susceptible to coercion or forced labor, it would have been your first day. Because at that point in time, he would have nothing on you. There was nothing he could blackmail you over. And he wouldn't blackmail you in the career or the field because actually you never started working for him. But even on those first days when Diddy was acting a fool and doing all these abusive things, these ladies stayed. This is what I have a problem with. And the other part I'm having a problem with is I don't know why the prosecution hasn't brought forth a witness that said everyone was afraid to leave Diddy because of what he would do to their career. But they have yet to bring a witness forward that says, after I left Diddy, my whole career was ruined because I was a person who stood up to him and I didn't care if he was going to ruin my reputation, and I still stood up to him. And none of these people actually go around. They haven't really brought forth a witness who's really laid that out really clearly for me, because we can't just keep going off of these salacious stories of Diddy. I'm going to need some proof. We've heard so many salacious stories of Diddy from his sex life, what he did to men. And now I don't feel like we're hearing any of these salacious stories being confirmed. So now I'm wondering, give me someone where Diddy ruined their career because they didn't do what he asked them to do. Because what I'm seeing every time is anytime someone wanted to leave Diddy's organization, they did, they were allowed to leave, they left, and they left with a check. And oftentimes they all wanted to come back because in the end, what they missed was they missed the limelight. They went around talking about how much they loved Diddy and how much he gave them all this opportunity in life. And can two things be true at once? Yes, they can. But if those two things are true at one time, that is what I'm telling you leads me to my reasonable doubt. I mean, a lot of the stories Mia told about Diddy are horrific. The times when, I think one of the ones was when they went to that Prince party and they weren't supposed to go. They weren't supposed to leave. And they got there and Diddy came and Diddy was dragging and beating on Cassie, and Prince's security team saw it and they stopped it. And even Mia herself sort of talked about themselves as if we were like little school kids sneaking out, defying Daddy, Puff Daddy, and he caught us and we got in trouble by Daddy. Like even when she tells the stories, it almost like she tells the stories as if she's a little girl. No matter how bad things got, she talks about one time we were out on the water and we were trying to get away from Diddy because he was in a rage, and we got out on the raft and we sailed out into the water, me and Cassie, and then the weather started getting bad. And then we thought, wow, the weather is bad. Should we brave Mother Nature or should we go back to Diddy? And in the end, we decided to go back to Diddy. It just, y'all, it just is a lot. It is a lot. Supposedly, a lot of this SA of Mia was going on all while Diddy was with Cassie, and Mia knew it. And she never said anything. Not only didn't say anything to the police, she never said anything to anyone. And I don't even think Cassie knew. I honestly, probably Cassie didn't know until Mia was on this testifying stand right now. That's what I believe. And I don't think she ever wanted Cassie to know. I really don't. I know maybe a lot of what she's going to say she didn't want anyone to know because it was the most horrific time of her life. She's embarrassed. She's traumatized by it. But I also think a part of her didn't want Cassie to know, because what you have to say is all those years she portrayed herself as a friend of Cassie's, a confidant of Cassie's, but yet in the background, all this stuff was going on with Diddy. And I think that in itself is also a place of shame for her. Mia told a lot of stories about times when Combs threatened to kill her. But she also told times when she threatened to unalive herself because she was being let go, fired, suspended from Combs's organization. And like I said, can two things exist as one? They can. More than one thing can be true, but when more than one thing is true, that's why I say it leads to reasonable doubt. Because to be 100% sure, I can't have both things to be existing and conflicting with each other, because I can't determine which part is the truth, which part isn't the truth. That's what leaves the doubt in my head. And I know a lot of people believe that the prosecution has proven their case completely. And I don't think that they have, because although they have proven that things happened, the defense has also proven the mindset of some of these victims. And as a result, yes, could all those things happen and those things could be considered these offenses? Yes. But once you start adding in, it needs to be coercion and it needs to be all these other parts of it, I feel like I don't think all these charges are going to be able to stick. Can they get them on something? Probably. But all these ones they've come up with, I don't think so, y'all. I really don't think so. I could be completely wrong, but I don't. This won't be the first time I'm wrong, and I don't need to be right. I'm just here talking to you guys about how I feel. I kind of feel like I'm an ordinary juror. I really do. Would they have kicked me off the trial if I was in the juror pool? Maybe. Maybe they would have sent me out and kicked me out. But I know one thing. I know we're hearing a lot of commentary from the legal field. I know we hear a lot of commentary from people who've also been victims of SA. But the problem, like I said before, is that none of these people, attorneys, lawyers, professionals, prior victims, are part of the jury. I don't think that they are. And as a result, this prosecutors have to know that there are a lot of people out here who have reasonable doubt, and they're going to have to do a better job. And although I've heard a lot of people say that, wow, the prosecution can rest their case, they don't even have to present any more evidence because they proved their case. The defense hasn't even gone yet. The defense hasn't even presented their own case. I can't imagine what else we're going to hear about what went on that's going to further lead people to believe that is this actual coercion? Is this actual coercion? And like I said before, that jurors' own involvement in maybe activities that legally could be called prostitution or trafficking, I think is going to give a lot of the men a pause. It's going to give a lot of the men the pause, because I don't think anybody wants to be seen as anything remotely close to a Diddy. And I think a lot of people are also going to look upon themselves and say, Do I believe all those people were forced and coerced and held against their will and kidnapped? And and if I do believe there was some parts of it, do I believe it without a shadow of doubt that none of it was voluntary or so that they could have all gains? And like I said before, I can believe these things happen, but I could also see other things. And that's why in my mind, I have a big hole of reasonable doubt. So I'm actually afraid that the prosecution is already resting their case. I really am, because I almost feel like they need more, that they need more. Everyone else seems like they're so happy they're resting their case. I'm like, really? Because now the defense gets a crack at this. And what if they start tearing apart some of the things everyone is already so sure about? What do they have up their sleeve? We'll have to see. We will have to see. I don't know. They haven't rested their case yet, so I'm sure we're going to hear more witnesses. But I hope they can get me a witness whereby the person, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Are they not out there? You can't get me a witness who left and said, I saw what Diddy was doing and I left. And when I left, he did this to me. He used his criminal enterprise against me. I don't know. It's a lot, y'all. It is a lot. Anyway, that's all I got right now. Let me know what y'all think down below, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.